placed under arrest and charged with disorderly conduct.
We are an independent podcast that focuses on the worst of military crimes and the victims and the voices left behind in their wake.
Views by the hosts and guests are our own and do not reflect those of our sponsors or employers.
We do our best with accuracy, but please rely on this information at your own risk.
Episode may contain sensitive subject matter. Viewer discretion is advised.
When Justice Goes AWOL is not affiliated with the military in any way.
How's it going, everyone? I hope you're having a lovely evening, and welcome to another episode of When Justice Goes AWOL. I'm your host, Nicole Charcoti. Levi Austin Frakes and Charles Ethan Fields. Having been former military themselves, it was pretty easy for them to get back on JBLM. Someone on base notices that these two guys are in this place that they shouldn't be. Investigators later said that it looked like that they'd gotten in using bolt cutters, which is just where you want to put your weapons, just behind a pair of something that you can cut apart yourself. Charles Ethan Fields and Levi Austin Frakes are wearing masks while they are actively stealing from this operations center too. The person who caught them notices that. They take off their masks, and after a while, these two men attack this poor person who just happened to stumble upon them that night. And it's not a fair fight. It's two guys on one. The guy's just trying to defend himself at this point. He is struck in the head with a hammer by one of the two men. It's probably important and worth mentioning that these two men took off their masks. And as far as leaving witnesses goes, that's usually not a good sign for anybody on the other end of that fight. One of these two cowards pulls a knife, and the man who caught them decides he's going to back off. It's not worth dying for, and that was the right thing for him to do. So these two men get what they can, and they flee JBLM, and they made off with about $14,000 worth of gear and equipment. Thurston County Sheriff's Office and CID execute a search warrant on a residence here in Lacey in June of 2025. During the search warrant, when they are actively searching this place, they recovered over 35 weapons. This arsenal laundry list included things like pistols, rifles, silencers, and a machine gun. I am a firm believer that the only one that should use a machine gun during the holidays is Bruce Willis. Military property that was seized that included things like body armor, flashbangs, smoke grenades, night vision equipment. So what did they do with all this stuff anyway? Why does this crime even matter? Like, what is such a big deal about stealing from a military base? Something about the way I just said that didn't sound right. And it matters because they searched these guys' bedrooms and they found paraphernalia, posters, literature on white supremacist and other white nationalist efforts. When one of the men agreed to talk to them, they asked how long that he had been doing this. He said close to 2 years, he and his partner had been stealing gear from JBLM. I can't say what they are here because YouTube will get mad at me, so we'll just call them the group that not even the Joker will work with. Even the Clown Prince of Crime has standards, gentlemen. We have had things like swastikas and nooses recategorized back to hate symbols in establishments like the frickin' Coast Guard. You know what took to fix that? Not morals and ethics or having a soul, it took literal backlash from the community. There's actually an article that I read on the International Center for Counterterrorism that I think is worth a decent read just to be more informed. You have a case of looking at somebody like Timothy McVeigh and extremist violence. He murdered 168 people, 19 of them were children. A selfish monster who thought they had the answers to solving everything political-wise and ended up hurting and causing tragedies among hundreds of families. He got the death penalty and he was executed by lethal injection. You know, how easy is it for people actively involved in hate crime organizations to perforate the military and actively recruit other people? It would make sense that certain right-wing groups do look for occupational specialties, and many of them in the military. And that could range from explosive weapons and military tactics. Racism and prejudice is still a very prevalent problem among the ranks. And deployed soldiers may not even necessarily belong to any extremist or type of hate group. I can imagine being somewhere overseas in a place that I know nothing about, with people I do not speak the language and converse with in an understandable way. And I can imagine that there are a lot of tensions, a lot of people that resent them just for their occupation. A lot of people go through that, but soldiers especially. And it would make sense. You have your brothers on the battlefield, they're in charge of watching your six, you watch theirs, and there is a type of cohesiveness that comes when you are defending your brothers from the enemy. It's that kind of like-mindedness that may justify racist or prejudiced behavior. We look at soldiers among the ranks, and then there's an issue of inclusiveness and diversity, which adds a lot to the team. When the rate for the recruitment target isn't met, you miss out on a lot of things that people could bring to certain operations, or intelligence, or strategizing that may not have been considered before, simply because of our own life experiences. And the presence of one group over another is bound to lead for certain expressions of hate speech that are considered the norm, simply because there is no diversity. Promoting ideas and ways of life are fine as long as you don't try to force it on anybody and it doesn't hurt anyone else. I believe it is very important to stay involved and up to date on these local crimes, especially when they hit the community that you live in. I'm from here, and I don't believe that this got the amount of attention that it nearly deserved when it came up in the news. The fact that their court dates have been pushed back so many times shows that it's not really a priority at the moment. And it does not help that another crime occurred within days of that happening. If it makes you all feel better, I will be going to the trial that comes up for these guys once they get a definitive date in their dockets. Because I'm so local to Washington and the Olympia-Lacey Tumwater area, we tend to hear about all the goings-ons that come out of JBLM. But sometimes it's important to pay attention to national cases that pop up. Like the episode that I had of the coverage of Michael Stockton's case where he assaulted over 41 male patients. Apparently the numbers, it's like a competition with these guys. We will be looking at a case out of Fort Hood, Texas, where a doctor was caught videotaping his patients, and the number of his victims may reign in the hundreds. The numbers went up, and many of these crimes were allowed to continue because the commanding officers and other higher-ups that these women reported their concerns and crimes to either didn't believe them or outwardly made fun of them for it. One of the only ways, and probably one of the best ways, that I can assist these victims in getting their stories heard, to hear their voices, is to talk about it. To keep this story going, to make sure that the perpetrator is held accountable, but also the commanding officers that let this happen, the higher-ups who let this happen. Anyone who turned it into a joke of these women deserves to face full repercussions for their lack of action. I think it shows what a disconnect there is from people in power like judges, magistrates, commanding officers, other military higher-ups, from the people who need to be represented when cases like these happen. Concerns need to be raised a lot more promptly than they were. I don't know if people in these types of positions realize how infuriating it is to somebody like me, who lost her fiancé, her apartment, everything, because one commanding officer couldn't have been bothered to place a suspected child predator in 1 day of pretrial confinement. I want to thank everybody who tuned in to watch today. Thank you so much. I'm Nicole Charcoti, and I gotta start cooking. Take care.